Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Crypto Hipsters Podcast, where I interview founders and co-founders, entrepreneurs and artists, executives and stay-at-home hipsters in crypto and blockchain around the world. And I have an amazing podcast for you today. Let's get to it.
My guest today, she is a CEO. She's a coder. She was up for Time Person of the Year for Kids. I'll let her tell you all about herself. Her name is Samaira Mehta, and I'm delighted to have her on the show today. Welcome, Samaira.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome. So, I mentioned a few things about you. Could you tell our audience who you are and your background and what got you into being a coder?
Yeah, definitely. So, hi, my name is Samaira Mehta. I am 13 years old, and I am based in San Francisco, California. And let's see, for me, I started out coding when I was around 6 years old. Okay, but even before that, to give you just a little bit of a background of myself, ever since I was very young, I've been very fortunate to have parents who have really introduced me to a variety of things. And they always provided me with so many options, but they never forced me to do anything. And I think that has really shaped the person that I am today. For example, I started swimming when I was 18 months old. And today, swimming is still one of my favorite things to do. I went on stage for the first time when I was 4 years old. And ever since then, I've loved being the center of attention. And then when I was 6 years old, in this process, there were so many other things I was introduced to. For example, playing the piano. That was never something I really enjoyed. And my parents never forced me into it. But then when I was 6 years old, my dad actually introduced me to coding through a prank he played. So he showed me something on his computer where there was a button, and that button said, "Press this if you're beautiful." And he told me to give it a try. But when my mouse pointer actually touched that button, it disappeared. And for me, my 6-year-old self was super confused. I was like, how did you do that? Like, am I not beautiful? What's going on here? And my dad told me that he used something called coding to create this prank. And I think that's when my interest in coding first started, because I wanted to be able to create similar pranks and games. And in the process, I started learning how to code, and I was really intrigued by how it all worked. For more than just the pranks and games, the actual putting together the pranks and games, the real coding behind it, was something I ended up finding super fascinating. But when I started talking to my friends about how much my 6-year-old self enjoyed this new coding thing, I found that my friends didn't share the same passion as I did. They thought coding was hard, boring, frustrating, and definitely not their definition of fun. But I think, I thought, this is so weird. Like, I love coding so much. How can my friends not like it? So I was determined to prove to them how fun coding could be through something that they did like. And at the time, my friends loved board games. We loved playing board games together. I loved playing board games with my families. They loved playing board games with their families. Board games were common interests between all of us. And I think that's when I sort of had this super crazy idea to bring coding onto a board game. And through that, try to prove to them how fun coding really is. And I think that's when my entrepreneurship journey really began. I was just setting out to solve a problem. Again, I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I set out to solve a problem. That was making coding fun for my friends. And then, it was a really hard process, actually being able to create a board game. First step, just getting my parents on board with this crazy idea. But, as I said, my parents were always open to letting me try different things, and they were always very, very supportive of me. So, when I first presented this idea to my parents, they were like, Okay, they didn't give me a definite answer. They didn't say yes or no. They rather asked me how I was going to do it. And this was really instilling that problem-solving mindset in me from a very young age. So, I did some research on what creating a board game involved, sort of presented, new idea to my parents with everything, all the research that I had done. And by research, I mean, reading a few books, maybe reading a few sites, because I was just 6 and 7 years old. But when I did present it, and when I did have sort of an idea of what actually creating a board game involved, my parents were on board right away. And, in the entire process, they were super supportive, helped me wherever I needed help. And from there, I had created one of my own board games. And that was super surreal to see that something that just started out as a Saturday afternoon project, trying to make coding fun for my friends, had now actually been a reality. And when I tried it out with my friends, I found out that coding was starting to become something that they liked. They didn't even know that what they learned in the board game was coding because it was so fun to them. And this sort of gave them the motivation to go back on the computer screen and try coding out again, give it another chance. And that was a lot of my goal behind actually the work that I was doing. So from here, I've actually created 2 more board games now. CoderMindz, the only board game in the world that teaches the concepts of artificial intelligence, and CoderMarz, a board game that brings together my love for coding, AI, and Mars. I've also created 2 more initiatives, or 3 more initiatives. Yes, 1 billion kids can code, a mission to help 1 billion kids around the world gain access to computer coding tools. Bizz, a program where I share my entrepreneurial skills with other youth, and they get the chance to create their own businesses and sort of, pitch it at the end of our little program to win some seed money to make their ideas a reality. And I've also started a program where I do workshops for girls only, with the goal of making girls feel more welcome in tech fields, because at the moment there's a huge gender gap, especially in tech fields. So these are just some of the things I'm passionate about. As you said, I've been very, very grateful to receive so much positive feedback from the media, from our community. I was named a Kind Kid of the Year finalist, as well as recognized by hundreds of medias across the world.
That's awesome, and I have so many follow-ups out of that. First and foremost, though, you and I share a similar background, because I was 11 years old, and I was the only kid in my neighborhood who had a computer, so I was learning how to code. I was learning how to code in BASIC, while everybody else was out there riding their bicycles. I did create a couple board games too. I don't remember what they were, but it was a long time ago. But I like that you said that you are into swimming. My kids swim, they play baseball, football, and they play instruments. So it's always good to have that creativity. So I always, like the energy when I see children with creativity, and that's what, interests me in speaking to you. You recently created Gen Arm 2Z as one of the founders there. Could you briefly say what that's all about?
Yeah, I didn't create Gen Arm 2Z, but I am an ambassador of ARM with Gen Arm 2Z. So basically what Gen Arm 2Z does is it gives a voice to my generation, Gen Z, the generation of tomorrow, where we get an opportunity to share the thoughts on the technology of today and how it's currently being used and how it can be used in our future, how it can be used to build our future. And I think I'm really grateful to ARM and Gen Arm 2Z for the platform that they give me and the other ambassadors. I'm very grateful for all of the opportunities that I've had with ARM and Gen Arm 2Z. But yeah, essentially it's a platform for the youth of today where we get to share our thoughts on the technology and how it can be used in our future.
Great. So you were recently a speaker at the UN's conference, I Am Generation Equality. What do you see as the future of your generation, Gen Z, as well as your role in that future with Gen Z?
Yes, absolutely. So I think, especially for the conference that I spoke at the United Nations on International Women's Day 2020, that was about, as I said, generation equality. a generation where there is not gender gaps in certain fields, and I was very fortunate to get to speak about the tech gender gap. And I think, my personal story behind this was just as I continued to do my work in the field of computer science, one thing I really noticed a lot of was that there were so few girls in it. The workshops that I used to hold, most of the attendees were boys, and to me that was confusing. Like, where are the girls in these fields? But I think when I did my research, I found out that there are only 24% of women or girls in the STEM workforce, and out of that, only 12% in fields like artificial intelligence. And now that I think about it, I think the reason behind this is the fact that opportunities are important, but they are not enough. Girls need to be prepared for the opportunities. And the only way to bridge this gender gap is to prepare girls at an early age. And so this is a lot of the reason why I started holding workshops, with the games that I've created and the other educational tools that I've created for girls and intended towards just girls, with the goal of getting them excited about coding and computer science. This way, as women, we can fully prepare to embrace work and compete in the technology field with equity and not privilege. I think that's a lot of my goal behind these workshops that I hold, to make girls feel more welcome in fields that there is currently a tech gender gap.
I find it interesting. You're 13, you're what, 7th grade, right? Today's youth is talking about equity already, which is great, and say equity existed, say there was equity, and that all Gen Z were, or as many as you could reach, were avid, skilled coders, right? What do you think would be possible for our global society if that were the case?
Yeah, I think that is a lot of the mission that I myself am on with Yes, 1 Billion Kids Can Code, the initiative that I started, with the goal to empower 1 billion kids around the world to get started into their journey in computer science and coding and STEM in general, so that they can become the problem solvers of the next generation. And I think, the real reason I'm doing all of this, like this big goal to help 1 billion kids learn how to code, is because when you learn how to code, you gain a problem-solving mindset. And this mindset is super crucial, super vital for whatever you choose to go on and do in your life. Even if one chooses not to pursue a computer science or become a professional coder. I believe that a basic coding understanding will make you better thinkers, better leaders, and better problem solvers of our next generation. So the real reason I'm doing this is so that we can all work together to create change. Because once we have that problem-solving mindset that to analyze any problem, come up with the best fit solution, there's so many problems that in today's world that we can tackle. And I think a lot of that problem-solving mindset can come from just learning coding. And I think that's really important. That's a lot of the reason behind why I'm doing this. And I believe if each and every one of us learn coding, we can create a better future.
So a lot of people want to change a lot of things. What do you think? What would be some of the areas that you would change?
Oh, absolutely. So I think, for me, I know there are so many problems in our worlds today, but I think a few of the problems that are most close to my heart are 3 main things, actually. The first one is just poverty and homelessness. I think this has always and will always remain a topic very close to my heart. I believe everybody deserves a safe place they can call home. So this is definitely one of the biggest problems I think I would love to tackle, and I think coding could also help us tackle. And I think the second problem is education. Quality education. I think education shapes so much of a person's life, and if each and every one of us can get the quality education, then who knows the incredible things our youth, this generation, is capable of. So I definitely think education is definitely one of also the big problems I want to solve, but also just equality for men and women, equality between races. Everybody should be treated equal. Girls should be welcome in tech fields. Minorities should be welcome in tech fields, and on all fields. And I think, just a more equal workforce, equal world is something really important that I want to fight for as well.
I think that's awesome. You are highly regarded as a champion for girls in technology. I want to find out what some of those initiatives that you're either championing or want to champion for girls. And then for older people like me, Generation X, we're called. How could women in Generation X start their own, entrepreneurship or blockchain even based business that, or some of the initiatives that you want to champion?
Absolutely. So I think a little bit about my initiatives. I think I've mentioned all of the major ones. As I've said, one of my biggest goals is, yes, 1 billion kids can code, a goal to empower 1 billion kids around the world to get started into their journey of computer science so that, they can become better problem solvers for our generation in order to create more change and solve more problems in our world of today. And the second initiative I've started is Bizz, and this actually really branches off the entrepreneurship topic, because I think, one thing I've realized from all of the talks I've given, all the events I've held, is that the youth of today have an amazing mindset that deserves to be heard. They have so many ideas, so many solutions, and I think it's really important to consider those as well. And that's why, first of all, I'm really grateful to ARM and Gen Arms to Z for actually giving my generation a voice in the technology of tomorrow. But I think with Bizz, a lot of my goal is to also get some of the ideas and solutions of youth heard through the businesses and companies they create. As I said, I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I set out to solve a problem. And now that I look back, that's how a lot of entrepreneurs actually started out. So what my goal with Bizz is for the youth of today to be able to do the same thing, be able to solve problems through the companies and the businesses they create. And so that's why I started Bizz in July of 2020. It's a 2-week program where I, alongside well-renowned entrepreneurs across the world, share the processes behind creating a business and becoming an entrepreneur. And at the end of the 2 weeks, the participants pitch their business idea for the chance to win some seed money. And my first Bizz was sponsored by Walmart. The second Bizz was sponsored by ARM, and we've given over $10,000 in seed money to the generation to be able to carry out their fantastic ideas. So that's one of my other initiatives. And I think I also touched on my third one a bit, but it's really just a goal of getting more girls into tech. And I do this through the workshops and the events I hold, because I think one thing I've noticed is girls see other girls doing the same thing, they feel more motivated that this is something that they too can do. It's not a barrier for them. It's something they can explore as well. So these are my main initiatives, the main work that I do, and all my board games and everything else fall under these umbrellas. But I think you touched on an important topic. How can the older generation also get involved? And I think, as I emphasize the voices of the youth of today, I want to equally emphasize the voices of the older generations, because I think, there is so much guidance and mentorship that you guys can provide us, my generation. I think I personally would be nothing close to where I am without the help and support of my mentors. So I think mentors play a huge role in our lives, and mentorship is something that can go very far. So I definitely think mentoring is an amazing idea. But also, if you want to go on and create your own businesses and your own companies, and I think you also touched on blockchain. I think blockchain is a very emerging field right now, and I think it's something that really interests me. But I think a lot of the basics behind it involve just the computer science and the math. And if we can get more women involved in these fields, we can create a lot more impact with blockchain. We could create a more impact on our world. And I think one thing I've really noticed is that women bring a lot to the table. There's creativity, collaboration, compassion, but women are mindset that is currently lacking in the technology of today. And if we get those heard and, put both views and both mindsets together, I truly believe that that's when the best ideas come to light. The best ideas only come to light when all ideas are put together. So I definitely do think that we need a lot more women in blockchain type fields as well. But I was talking about entrepreneurship and, similar thing, I think you should just go for it, get started. And it really all starts with a problem. I think for me, it's like that. And I'm trying to encourage the students at Bizz to do the same. It starts out with a problem that you want to solve and just go for it. Go on and solve that problem.
So you just made me think of something. Thank you. I was on a panel for Collision yesterday or the day before. The 2 days merged together for me. The question was, what's the language of technology? And we spoke it in terms of English versus Chinese. We didn't speak of it in terms of masculine versus feminine. You talk about Boss Bizz, right? And mentorship is something out there. What's the on-ramp for mentorship into Boss Bizz or into your generation? What would be those on-ramps for my generation to be able to communicate and mentor your generation?
Yes, I think that is a fabulous question. I think, for me, a lot of what I'm trying to do with my initiative Boss Bizz is also provide mentorship, a means of mentorship, and connecting the older generation with our younger generation so that, I think, for me, one thing I realized is the older generation is so experienced. You have so many stories to tell, so much experience that I think my generation can really benefit from and use. So I think with Boss Bizz, a lot of my goal is to provide a means of mentorship where we can connect the older adults with the younger adults and with the younger children, and to be able to let them work together to be able to create the best ideas, to bring the best ideas to light. And that is definitely something really important. But there are also so many other platforms out there that can do a similar thing, connect mentors or people who are willing to mentor with people who need mentorship or mentees. And I think it's really important, and I love that the older generation is willing to do that and willing to provide that mentorship, because there is so much that my generation can gain from that.
I agree. No, that's awesome. Most people, I gotta shift gears a little bit because there's something else I want to ask you. Most people think when you mention talking about the planet and change and all that, when you say the word Mars, most people think of Elon Musk, right? Mm-hmm. Yet you're the chief inventor for CoderMarz, right? So what lessons are you learning from your game, CoderMarz, or from the space economy, or your view there that could have a real impact, not only on the mentorship, but on other parts of society and change?
Absolutely. So I think, we are learning so much every day about the world outside of our own. We're learning so much about Mars and who knows how many other planets and lives and means of life there are out there. And that has always been something that has really intrigued me. But I think, as you may have heard, NASA recently sent a rover to Mars, and it landed very safely and successfully. And it's currently, collecting rock samples and things like that to see if there ever was life, if there is ever possibility for life on Mars, and detecting things like if there was water, if there is water, and all sorts of really fascinating things. But I think, if there's anything we've learned from all of these missions to Mars and, all of the Mars research we've done, one of the main things is definitely that persistence pays off, and I think that persistence pays off, and I think that's something really applicable in our world here on Earth as well. There have been numerous missions to numerous places outside of Earth, and not every single one has succeeded, but that definitely has not stopped these amazing scientists from keep on trying, from keeping on trying. And I think that's something really important, to learn from the mistakes that you've done and be able to use those to create improved versions, to create, definitely improved versions. And, you know, as many failures as there have been, there's also been tons of successes. And I think a lot of that comes from learning from what you did wrong the first time you tried. And that is definitely something very important, of course, here on Earth. Persistence, right? You have to keep on trying, keep on, you know, learning from your mistakes and not think of them as failure. Think of them as stepping stones to that success. I think another thing we've learned is innovation, right? It takes so much innovation to be able to create something that will work, that, you know, will work on Mars or anywhere else we send these rovers or satellites or things like those. And I think, you know, the innovation you gain there is irreplaceable. Like, that takes so much, like, skill, so much knowledge, but also so much creativity. And I think, you know, that creativity is something we can use a lot of here on Earth as well. You know, I think creativity is what incites solutions, right? Like, I had a crazy idea to create a board game that teaches coding. And I don't think that's really someone could ever imagine those two things going together. Coding is something you do on a computer, board game is something that you play off the computer. But it's about creativity. It's about the innovation of being able to bring those two things together to be able to make coding fun. And I think that is one of the big things we've learned from the Mars missions and research on Mars, is that innovation and creativity is crucial.
I like that concept of persistence. One of the things that one of the panels that I was on for the Collision Conference is how do we break out of our echo chambers? And I have a lot of friends who I have been friends with over the years on Facebook, and a lot of my people my age that grew up with there were tired of, seemed to be a period of tired of being on social media or having an echo chamber where no one's listening. And I like that concept of persistence. You know, for those who think technology has passed them by, right, or that's too late to learn something new, what words of advice, since you're coming from an area of creativity and passion and embracing and loving, what do you think? What pieces of advice would you give to our older generation here?
Yeah, so I think definitely one thing I say to the younger generation is you're never too young to try something or to start something. I created my own company at 7 years old, right? But I think, as I said earlier, I want to give the exact same message to our older generation. You are never too old to try something new. You're never too old to give something a chance. So I definitely say don't let your age or, you know, how old you are or think that technology just passed by you ever be a barrier to trying to learn about technology, learn about what's involved with technology. I think for me, it has always been such an interesting field. And, you know, definitely may not be the same for you, and that's okay. But I think, you know, you should not let your age or just think of it as something that's past, and don't let that be a barrier to you. Definitely do give it a try, because it is something that is pretty interesting once you learn how it all works.
Awesome. So my one last question for you, I could ask you like lots of more questions, but one last question for this podcast I have for you is how can people learn more information about you, about your companies, about what you're up to? How can they find out more about you?
Yes, of course. So, you know, I am on all social media. My @ is CoderBunnyz, CoderBunnyz. You can learn all about my upcoming projects or the things that I'm working on over there. You can also visit some of my websites. My main website, where I actually talk about all of the work that I do, is yes1billionkidscancode.org. That's just YESBILLIONKIDSCANCODE.org. So yeah, yes1billionkidscancode.org is my main website. I'm on all social media at CoderBunnyz. And if you ever just want to learn more about me or my work, you can just search up my name, Samaira Mehta, and I'm sure you'll find some stuff to look at.
Excellent. Well, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much for being my guest today. And I also want to thank, Collision 2021 for bringing us together. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you